hums in a high pitch, singing the glories of the Lord. There is a temporary lull in the noise of the pigeon, the cuckoo, the crane, the chekravaka, the swan, the parrot, the partridge, and the peacock. Such transcendental birds stop their own singing simply to hear the glories of the Lord. Purport by the divine Guru, Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. This verse reveals the absolute nature of Vaikuntha. There is no difference between the birds there and the human resident. The situation in the spiritual sky is that everything is spiritual and variable. Spiritual variegatedness means that everything is animate. There is nothing inanimate. Even a tree, the ground, plants, flowers, the birds, and the beasts are all on the level of Krishna. The special feature of Vaikuntha worship is that there is no question of sense life. In the material world, even an ass enjoys its sound like it. But in the Vaikuntha, such nice birds as the peacocks, the chakravakas, and the cuckoo prefer to hear the vibration of the glories of the Lord than the bees. The principles of devotional service beginning with hearing and chanting are very common in the Vaikuntha world. Well, here's information that you could never get anywhere else. They don't have this information in all the science or all the, let's say, teachings in schools because they don't use the Srimad Bhagavatam to understand things. They just depend on science and experiment. You cannot understand anything about the spiritual world through experiment because you can't experiment it. It's transcendental. You can't even see it. So therefore, we have to get knowledge through the Vedic literature. Otherwise, there's no other way. And but scientists, mundane scientists, they say, well, if we can't see it, we can't touch it, we can't taste it, and for us, it doesn't exist. Well, that's a big mistake. In many things, they don't exist. You can't just reject the fact that you or we, with our imperfect senses, can't see things. We have to learn by hearing from authorities, not by trying to see everything. Most of the things you see, many times you make a mistake. And that is because we have every human being has four fundamental defects. They have imperfect senses, they have cheating propensity, and so forth. They have these different defects. They make mistakes. They also have imperfect senses and so forth. So we cannot understand the truth simply by seeing or doing experiments and so forth. We have to hear from authorities. It's like if you want to know who your father is, well, the authority is your mother. If you say, well, I don't accept what my mother says, okay, then what do you have to do? You have to go and experiment or talk to every man in the world to find out, are you my father? You see, so that's something impossible normally. So therefore, we have to accept the authority of Shastra, because we cannot find out all the mysteries of the universe simply by seeing. But we can find out if we hear from bona fide devotees who don't engage in any sinful activities and who also have heard from pure devotees themselves. So here it says, this verse reveals the absolute nature of Vaikuntha. Well, how are you going to find out about Vaikuntha? You're not going to find out by studying and experimenting. because you can't even see Vaikuntha. Right? So we have to hear from experts like the pure devotees and genuine gurus who are simply repeating knowledge that's in the Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. Those are the two perfect texts, understanding what we're not able to understand on our own. People try to understand things on their own. One time, this one boy called me up and he said, I'm interested in spiritual life. I said, that's very good. He said, what should I do? Well, I said, you should come and listen to our lectures and eat only prasadam and chant Hare Krishna. Well, he said, I want to do it on my own. I said, what do you mean you want to do it on your own? Well, I don't want anyone to tell me what to do. I'll just do it on my own. I said, you'll never find out that way. Well, I don't believe that.
A lot of people like that.
Yeah, there are a lot of people like that, fortunately. And they'll never really find out what they're looking for. Okay, so one thing we have to understand about the spiritual world, I mean, right now, with their own senses and their own mind, it's very difficult to understand what's happening in the spiritual world. But if we read Srimad Bhagavatam with the help of genuine devotees, the knowledge of what's happening in the spiritual world is easy to understand. So here it says, this verse reveals, important word, reveals, the absolute nature of Vaikuntha. There is no difference between the birds there and the human residents. Oh, well, that's going to be hard for materialistic people to understand. Mm-hmm. The situation in the spiritual sky is that everything is spiritual and variegated. Spiritual, variegated, this means that everything is animate. So that means the ground is animate and everything is animate. It's always moving and conscious. There is nothing inanimate. There is nothing that's like dead in the spiritual world. Everything is living. And even the trees, the ground, the plants, the flowers, the birds, and the beasts are all on the level of Krishna consciousness. Well, we don't think of the ground being something that can be conscious. But in the spiritual world, it is. So we need to hear this so that we don't make any speculative statements. Like someone can say, well, how can the ground be conscious? I mean, we walk on the ground, we see it every day, and it doesn't look like it's conscious. Well, maybe not in the material world, but in the spiritual world, yes, it is conscious. There is nothing inanimate. Even the trees, the ground, the plants, the flowers, the birds, and the beasts are all on the level of Krishna consciousness. The special feature of Vaikuntha Loka is that there is no question of sense gratification. In the material world, even an ass, meaning a donkey, enjoys his sound vibration. But in Vaikuntha, such nice birds as the peacock, the chakravaka, and the cuckoo prefer to hear the vibration of the glories of the Lord from the bees. The principles of devotional service, beginning with hearing and chanting, are very prominent in the Vaikuntha world. So there are bees in the Vaikuntha world that glorify Krishna. So you don't see that here. You see a bee, you're very careful because you don't want the bee to sting you. But in the spiritual world, the bees are singing the glories of the Lord. What a difference there is. Okay, so we'll go to text 19. Although flowering plants like the mandara, kunda, kurabaka, utpala, champaka, arna, punaga, naga, keshara, Bakula, lily, and the Parijatra are full of transcendental fragrance. They are still conscious of the austerities performed by Tulasi. The Tulasi is given special preference by the Lord, who garlands himself with Tulasi leaves, purport by Srila Prabhupada. The importance of the Tulasi leaves is very clearly mentioned here. Tulsi plants and their leaves are very important in devotional service. Devotees are recommended to water the Tulsi tree every day and collect the leaves to worship. One time, an atheistic Swami remarked, "What is the use of watering the Tulsi plant? It's better to water eggplant." Well, that's Vivekananda, the egghead, idiot person. By watering the eggplant, one can get some fruits. But what is the use of watering the Tulasi? These foolish creatures, unacquainted with devotional service, sometimes play havoc with the education of people in general. Well, yes, Vivekananda and then his guru, Ramakrishna, they ruined Vedic Dharma. Even up till today, they're still ruining Vedic Dharma. Even though they're dead and gone, people are still following the Hindus. So unfortunate they follow. And they actually, laud or think that their biggest heroes are Vivekananda and his name is Ramakrishna. But what do they say? What Vivekananda said, "What is the use of watering the Tulsi plant? It is better to water eggplant." This shows how stupid he is. What is the use of watering the Tulsi plant? It is better to water eggplant. By watering the eggplant, one can get some fruits, but what is the use of watering the Tulsi? This is what Vivekananda said. These foolish creatures, unacquainted with devotional service, sometimes play havoc with the education of people in general. Well, they did it. They did play havoc, and it succeeded in a big way with people in India. The most important thing about the spiritual world is that there is no envy among the devotees there. This is true even among the flowers, which are all conscious of the greatness of Tulasi. In the Vaikuntha world, entered by the four Kamaras, even the birds and the flowers are conscious of service to the Lord. Well, that's why we should want to go back to Vaikuntha, where we came from, because there's no envy there. Everyone works cooperatively to glorify the Lord and to engage in transcendental activities and to respect the Tulsi Devi and so forth. There's a big difference in the spiritual world and the material world. And now we're beginning to hear a lot of specific things about the spiritual world that are different than in the material world. Okay, so now we continue. Text 20. The inhabitants of Vaikuntha Loka travel in their airplanes made of lapis lazuli, emerald, and gold. So what are the airplanes made of here?
Steel.
Yeah. Things. But there in the spiritual, it's made of lapis lazuli. It's a beautiful type of the stone. Very, very beautiful, multicolored. Emerald, which is a green type of jewel, and gold, which is, of course, very precious. Although crowded by their consorts, meaning there's a lot of ladies who are inhabitants of Vaikuntha and are on the airplanes, who have large hips and beautiful smiling faces, they cannot be stimulated to passion by their mirth and beautiful charm. So they're very, very beautiful ladies in the spiritual world. And of course, they have very attractive bodies. which means they have large hips and beautiful smiling faces. Now, this is an interesting uh, statement because now it has become a big, let's say, popular thing among women to purposely inflate their hips. And sometimes it goes over, it's done by, let's say, unqualified doctors, and then they die. But they like to have thin you know, belly and inflated or big hips. And they think that it's something that makes men attracted to them more. And this, you can see this, well, I hope you don't, but you see this with these movie stars and big, say, women who are, involved in sex. They try to have these big hips. Sometimes they try and have it done artificially. Sometimes they die from doing this type of operations on their body. In the material world, opulences are achieved by materialistic persons by dint of their labor. One cannot enjoy material prosperity unless he works very hard to achieve it. But the devotees of the Lord, or residents of Vaikuntha, have the opportunity to enjoy the transcendental situation of jewels and emeralds. Ornaments made of gold bedecked with jewels are achieved not by working hard, but by the benediction of the Lord. In other words, devotees in the Vaikuntha world, or even in this material world, cannot be poverty-stricken, as is sometimes supposed. They have ample opulences for enjoyment, but they need not labor to achieve them. It is also stated that in the Vaikuntha world, the consorts of the residents are many, many times more beautiful than we can find in this material world. Even in the higher planes, it is especially mentioned here that a woman's large hips are very attractive and they stimulate man's passion. But the wonderful feature of Vaikuntha is that although the women have large hips and beautiful faces and are decorated with ornaments of emeralds and jewels, the men are so absorbed in Krishna consciousness that the beautiful bodies of the women cannot attract them. In other words, there is enjoyment of the association of the opposite sex, but there is no sexual relationship. The residents of Vaikuntha have a better standard of pleasure, so there's no need of sex pleasure. Wow, that's a very, very big statement, very profound. That is, that when you have something that is special and better than other things, then you're not interested in those other things. You're only interested in the superior thing. And that's normal. So here on the earth, you'll see that women, especially like the women that are trying to be sexual objects, will purposely have their bosoms or their hips and their their the middle part and their their hips enlarged, and they have to go through an operation to do that. Sometimes they die because they think that men will be more interested in them to have large, let's see, what do you call that? Large hips and the middle part of their body. And unfortunately, this is all because of trying to entice men with their body for sexual relationship. So that's why it says, it is specifically mentioned here that a woman's large hips are very attractive. and they stimulate man's passion. But the wonderful feature of Vaikuntha is that although the women have large hips, beautiful faces, and are decorated with ornaments of emeralds and jewels, the men are so absorbed in Krishna consciousness that the beautiful bodies of the women cannot attract. Very important statement. In other words, there is enjoyment of the association of the opposite sex, but there is no sexual relationship. The residents of Vaikuntha have a better standard of pleasure, so there's no need of sex pleasure. So, if you have a certain level of, let's say, happiness, but then you discover there's a greater type of happiness, you leave the lower happiness and go to the higher happiness. It's always just a natural thing. So no matter how many emeralds and jewels and big hips women have in the spiritual world, the men are so absorbed in Krishna consciousness that the beautiful bodies of the woman cannot attract them. Whereas here in the material world, women try and attract men by having as much as possible beautiful bodies and beautiful ornaments, emeralds, jewels, so forth, and high heels and all these different things. So there was once a lady that came to our temple in Paris, and she came and she had her high heels and she had her stockings, they're special, and she had all kinds of makeup, and hair was especially done by some coiffeur, and she had perfume and a lot of jewels on her body, and she came in and they asked her to take her shoes off, her high heels, which she did. And then she said, "I want to be like you." I said, "Oh, I'm happy." They will teach you everything. So I didn't want to closely associate with this woman because obviously she was not Krishna conscious at that time. Right? So by associating with the women, she got rid of her high heels, the perfume, the jewelry, and all those things, and put on a sari and covered her hair. And she became a devotee. She was still working. She was what you call it, a very high level the helper, executive secretary, very high level executive secretary. And she was always with her boss, who was a big executive. So when he found out she was trying to become a devotee, he told her, "You have to stop this immediately, otherwise I'm going to fire you. You're going to lose the money I'm giving you. You're going to lose the apartment because you were paying for her apartment also. And the car," he said, "we'll take the car back." She had a very nice car. And why was he giving her all these things? Because he was married, because he was having an illicit relationship with her. She was like his prostitute. And she was very, let's say, attractive woman. So when she first came to the temple, she had her high heels and the hairdo and perfume and the jewelry, everything. But then when she became a devotee, every time she went to the temple, she had a sari on, those other things. And then her boss found out about it. So he gave her an ultimatum. That means let's say, final threat. And what was that final threat? He said, "You keep going to see those people, meaning the Hare Krishnas. I'm going to fire you. You're going to lose everything you have, your apartment, your car, and the money and your job. So she thought about this, and then the next time she came to the temple, she had her jewelry, perfume, high heels, tight dress, uh, showing her big hips and so forth. And she said, "I came to tell you I'm not coming anymore." And we felt really bad, you know, when she said that. And she didn't look real happy about saying it, but she said it with a lot of, let's say, determination. And she explained that her boss told her if she continues to be Krishna conscious, he was going to fire her and she was going to lose all her material assets that he was giving her. And basically, the boss was married, but he was using her as a prostitute. Right? But he was giving her a lot of money and paying for her apartment and nice car and all that stuff. So she was not able to say no to her boss because she was attached to those things. On the other hand, she wanted to be Krishna conscious, but you see, there are men like this, a lot of men like this, that even though they're married, they're still not satisfied. So they have a sexual relationship with their coworkers, the women that work for them. And because they're powerful, rich men, sometimes women are attracted to them, even though they know that the man is married. Okay, so, however, here it says, it is specially mentioned here that a woman's large hips are very attractive and they stimulate man's passion. There are women that go to doctors and get these shots that they get into their butt, basically, and it expands their butt. And that's considered to be something, when they have these large hips, it's considered to be very attractive and stimulate man's passion. Okay, so, however, it says that in Vaikuntha world, the consorts or the women of the men of the residents are many, many times more beautiful than we can find in this material world, even in the higher planets. It is specifically mentioned here that a woman's large hips, basically means her big butt, are very attractive and they stimulate man's passion. But the wonderful feature of Vaikuntha is that although women have hips and beautiful faces and are decorated with ornaments of emeralds and jewels, their men are so absorbed in Krishna consciousness that the beautiful bodies of the women cannot attract them. In other words, there is enjoyment of the association of the opposite sex, but there is no sexual relationship. The residents of Vaikuntha have a better standard of pleasure, so there's no need of sex pleasure. So when you have a better standard of pleasure, which means chanting, dancing, having nice prasadam associated with people, hearing Bhagavad Gita, teaching others to become Krishna conscious, going on Sankirtan, all these things. So you have a better level of happiness. So you give up the lower level based on sex and meat eating and gambling and so forth. So it says the residents of Vaikuntha have a better standard of pleasure. So there is no need of sex pleasure. Now, if you explain that to a materialistic man, they'll say, no, 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 no. For him, there's nothing better than sex pleasure. He can't imagine a pleasure that's greater than sex. And because of that, it ruins their lives. Okay, look up Harvey Weinstein. Look up Harvey Weinstein. He's a very wealthy man. Person who was very prominent in the movie business. So women were always around him, wanting to get a job, become a movie star. And he was taking advantage of those women by forcing them to have sex with him so that with the hope that these women would become movie stars. You see him?
Yes.
Yeah. What's he look like? Does he look good?
Uh, he looks like this.
Very, yeah.
Like a heart?
And in the definition, it says, born March 19th, 1952, an American former film producer and convicted sex offender. In 1979, Weinstein and his brother Bob Weinstein co-founded the entertainment company Miramax, which produced several successful independent films, including Sex, Lies, and Videotape. 1989, The Crying Game. 1992, Pulp Fiction. Okay, I'm just gonna skip that.
Oh, so he's a
Weinstein.
nonsense person. That's the point. Big nonsense person, right?
This is
And
the
it
better
ruined his life. What?
It's a better picture.
Oh, yeah, this Harvey. No, he doesn't look like that now. It was much worse than that. Why? Because he's engaged always in having sex and eating nonsense things like meat and fish. Gefilte fish. You know what gefilte fish is? The Jews always eat it. It's a horrible, horrible thing. It's a type of fish.
Juice.
That's their, that's their gulag. Like Hindus like to eat gulags, and the Jews like to eat gefilte fish. You can look it up. Gefilte fish.
Gefilte.
Fish. Horrible. So we see that, when people have bad diets, eating meat and fish and things like that, they also usually develop bad habits of engaging in illicit sex and then contaminating young girls or young women to also have illicit sex by grooming them. Grooming is a good word to know. A good word to know. Let's look it up. GROM. Grooming. Grooming is through different subtle suggestions and different, let's say, perks or advantages you give someone. Yeah, what does it say? What does it say? Grooming?
The practice of brushing and cleaning the coat of a horse, dog, or other.
Okay, that's the first definition.
Second definition is the practice of preparing or training someone for a particular purpose or activity. Alien was expected to need a lot of grooming before he was ready to take over.
Is that all?
Yeah, wait, there's a C more better. Oh, there's a sexual grooming.
Yes, that's the whole point.
Sexual
men
grooming
become-
is
Go ahead.
Sexual grooming is the action of behavior used to establish an emotional connection with a minor and sometimes the child's family to lower the child's inhibitions
Inhibitions.
with the objective of sexual abuse. It can occur in various settings, including online, in person, and through other means of communication. Children who are groomed may experience mental health issues, including anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress, and suicidal thoughts.
Yeah, and it's not just little girls, it's boys also. They're being groomed by evil people through the internet because kids have access to the internet. And there's so many what you would call depraved, nasty people that purposely pretend to be a child also to be able to talk to a child and eventually convince them to come and meet them outside and not tell their parents and they meet this horrible person who the child, thinks becomes attached to by talking to that person on a daily basis on the internet. And finally, the man convinces the child to come and see him, and then when the child goes to see that person, and they already trust the person because they've been talking to him for a long time, right? And it can be a girl, it can be a boy, it doesn't matter. And then they become groomed by that man to have sex. It's a very, very nasty thing that some men do in order to exploit children, take advantage of them. So you can look it up on the internet, minor man or woman becomes groomed by a pedophile. Pedophile, look that word up. Pedophile means a person who likes to take advantage of children and have sex with them. Children now, right? Not adults. Pedophile. What does it say?
Pedophile is this primary term used to describe someone who is sexually attracted to children. The term comes from the Greek word pedophilos, which means loving children. It can be pronounced as pedophile or peda. So that's what I found. And
Well, they don't really love children. They exploit children for sex. They like to have sex with children. These are very evil people. There's a lot of them. Now. And once they get caught, they are prosecuted and put in jail because they're dangerous people. But unfortunately, because kids have now internet connections and so forth, they sometimes are groomed by pedophiles, men who like to have sex with kids. And they get them on the internet, they meet them on the internet, and they say all kinds of things, and the kid begins to talk to them every day. And finally, the kid agrees to meet the pedophile, the person, the man who has this very contaminated desire to have sex with a young boy or a young girl. And then of course the pedophile tells the little boy or girl, don't tell your mommy and daddy. And then they arrange to have a meeting, and then the pedophile, takes him somewhere and has sex with him. It's happening a lot. But before they have sex, first the pedophile will give, nice things, nice presents, treats them to things they like ice cream and so forth. And all this is happening without the parents knowing, unfortunately. Parents are so busy making money that they don't really have time to spend with their kid, and all of a sudden the kid has access to the internet runs into a nasty pedophile, but the pedophile acts like the nicest person in the world to the kid on the phone, and eventually they meet, and eventually the man starts having sex with the young girl and the young boy. First of all, they trust the man or the woman by talking to them on the phone all the time and on the internet. Yeah. So pedophilia, look that word up. Pedophilia. 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 Of course, it's not enjoyable for the kid. Oftentimes, it ruins the life of the kid. Yes.
Pedophilia.
Um, uh, it's a noun and it says the first definition, and there's no other definition, is sexual desire in an adult for a child.
There you go. Sexual desire. Normally, adults should be protecting children, right? But you have the evil people, evil adults, that their only desire is to be able to molest, look that word up, molest a child. Molest. Good to know all these things, because then you can understand who's good and who's bad. Yes. Molest. M-O-L-E-S-T.
To make indecent sexual
Indecent. Meaning,
indecent
very disgusting, bad.
sexual advances to assault sexually, and older use to brother interfere with or annoy.
I didn't understand that. What
The older use of this word, to
is it?
bother,
What?
the old usage of this word,
Yeah, is.
to bother, interfere with, or annoy
Yeah, but molest now usually is used in the term
sexually.
as a term to sexually abuse a child. Yeah. So here we are in a world today, and where what used to be really, criminal before, it's still criminal today, but there are many people that do this, that become molesters. Until they get caught, of course, and then they're going to be prosecuted. But it doesn't stop. And why doesn't it stop? Because I'll tell you, one major reason why it hasn't stopped, it's gotten much worse, is because you can look this up. The United States stopped banning pornography. And because of that, it's ruined the lives of many, many people now. Pornography previously was forbidden, and you could be, you could go to jail for, selling pornography and so forth. Yes.
The First Amendment of the United States Constitution protects most pornography, including erotic material for adults. However, the Supreme Court has repeatedly ruled that the First Amendment does not protect the distribution of obscenity.
Obscenity, yeah, meaning very disgusting sexual pictures and books. They used to be against the law, and then because of the stupid judges, they said, "Well, it's free speech." And the name is free speech. They made
Misuse.
pornography legal, whereas before it was always illegal in the United States because it corrupts kids,
Yeah.
right? It corrupts adults also, right? So pornography is all kinds of pictures about people having sex and all kinds of different sex, and it's very, very horrible. But somehow or other, on the plea of the freedom of speech in the United States, they made it, whereas before in the United States it was illegal, they made it legal to look at pornography, and no longer they don't put people in jail because of that. Previously you could get fined or put in jail.
Yeah. And it also says it's under the US free speech law, Maharaj.
Yeah, free speech. Yeah, free speech was not meant for permitting pornography.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, the lawyers, the demon lawyers, got together and eventually, on the basis of the First Amendment in the United States, made pornography legal, which is a horrible thing to do. Horrible thing to do. It just shows you how imperfect the American process is.
Yes, yeah.
And That's why Prabhupada says, what do you say? That democracy is demon crazy.
Hmm.
You say democracy, but he said
Demon crazy.
demon crazy.
Yeah.
And that's what the United States has become now, demon crazy. You know, you can see pornography everywhere. And it's not illegal. Right? And it corrupts the minds of children and kids and adults also.
Yeah.
Now, of course, there are limits. The limit is like, if they catch a man who has a lot of pictures of a man molesting a child, and there are, there are pictures like that you can buy, but they're actually outlawed. But yet there's a whole subculture of men that want to have pictures like that. So, it's just like supply and demand. There are these perverted men and some women that want to see pictures of kids being molested by adults. It's something that they say turns them on. And it corrupts the mind. And there are movies also, or films, or videos also. So the way a pedophile is a man or a woman that wants to have sex with a child, first they show the kid these very disgusting movies where a child is being molested by an adult. And then that increases the lustiness, even in a child. It can increase the lustiness. And then eventually, after looking at movies like that, the child agrees to be molested. These are all demoniac things, the horrible things that are happening in this country. And we have to be very careful. We have to protect our children because there are people out there, the demons, Before there's a few demons, now there's a lot of demons. Before, previous time there was, Hiranyakashipu and Ravana. Now there's hundreds, thousands, millions of Ravanas walking around looking, dressed nicely, looking like normal people, but they're not, they're demons. So we have to be very careful, very, very careful who we let our children associate with. But in the spiritual world, there is enjoyment of association of the opposite sex, meaning men associated with women, but there's no sexual relationship. The residents of Vaikuntha have a better standard of pleasure, so there's no need of sex pleasure. So when you have something better than something else that you have, then you give up the lesser pleasure and you take up the higher pleasure. So the higher pleasure for people that are in the mode of goodness is devotional service, chanting and dancing and having nice prasad. It's a higher pleasure than eating meat and gambling and illicit sex and intoxication. Much higher pleasure. So people give up the lower pleasure for the higher pleasure. But so many people get contaminated and they think the higher pleasure is eating meat and having sex and so forth. Okay, so now, text 21. The ladies in the Vaikuntha planets are as beautiful as the goddess of fortune herself. Such transcendently beautiful, the ladies in Vaikuntha, of course. Their hands playing with lotuses and their leg bangles tinkling are sometimes seen sweeping the marble walls, which are bedecked at intervals with golden borders, in order to receive the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So there are this is in Vaikuntha, ladies in Vaikuntha who are very beautiful, as beautiful as the goddess of fortune herself. And they're playing with lotuses in their hands,
Brady is for $10.
Looks like I just missed. She
leg bangles, tinkling, tinkling, making noise, nice noise. And sometimes seen sweeping the marble walls, which are bedecked with at intervals with golden borders, in order to receive the grace of the Supreme Personality of God. So these women are very beautiful in the Vaikuntha planets as goddesses of fortune. Report by Srila Prabhupada. In the Brahma Samhita, it is stated that the Supreme Lord Govinda is always served in his abode by many, many millions of goddesses of fortune, Lakshmis, or Lakshmi Sahasra Satasam Brahmasev Yamanam. These millions and trillions of goddesses of fortune, who are all very beautiful, who reside in the Vaikuntha planets, are not exactly consorts of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but are the wives of the devotees of the Lord, and also engage in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is stated here that in the Vaikuntha planets, the houses are made of marble. Similarly, in the Brahma Samhita, it is stated that the ground on the Vaikuntha planets is also made of touchstone. Whoa. Touchstone is something that if you touch it, you can get whatever you want. Right. Thus, there is no need to sweep the stone in Vaikuntha, for there is hardly any dust on it. But still, in order to satisfy the Lord, the ladies there always engage in dusting the marble walls. Why? The reason is that they're eager to achieve the grace of the Lord by doing this. In other words, when Krishna sees the ladies and wives and dusting the walls, he gets attracted by what they're doing. They don't get on the ground and clean the ground. The ground is already clean, like but the ladies, instead of getting on their knees and washing the ground, they dust the walls. That attracts Krishna. It is also stated here that in the Vaikuntha planets, the goddesses of fortune are faultless. Generally, the goddess of fortune does not remain steadily in one place. Her name is Chanchala, which means one who is not steady. We find, therefore, that a man who is very rich may become the poorest of the people. Another example is Ravana. Ravana took away Lakshmi, Sitaji, to his kingdom, and instead of being happy by the grace of Lakshmi, his family and his kingdom were vanquished. In other words, destroyed. Thus, Lakshmi in the house of Ravana is Chanchala, or unsteady. Men of Ravana's class want Lakshmi only, without her husband, Narayan. Therefore, they become unsteady due to Lakshmiji. Materialistic persons find fault on the part of Lakshmi, but in Vaikuntha, Lakshmiji is fixed in the service of the Lord. In spite of her being the goddess of fortune, she cannot be happy without the grace of the Lord. Even the goddess of fortune needs the Lord's grace in order to be happy. Yet in the material world, even Brahma, the highest created being, seeks the favor of Lakshmi for happiness. Okay. So it says here, materialistic persons find fault on the part of Lakshmi. When Vaikuntha, Lakshmiji is fixed in the service of the Lord. In spite of her being the goddess of fortune, she cannot be happy without the grace of the Lord. Even the goddess of fortune needs the Lord's grace in order to be happy. Yet in the material world, even Brahma, the highest created being, seeks the favor of Lakshmi. So Lakshmi in the house of Ravana is Chanchala, unsteady. Men of Ravana's class want Lakshmi only, without her husband, Narayan. Therefore, they become unsteady due to Lakshmi. So we see Indians especially, oftentimes they worship Lakshmi without Narayan, not knowing that Lakshmi is not pleased when she's being worshipped independent of her husband, without her husband present. So the idiot Hindus worship her for, that was well. But she becomes chanchal when she's worshipped alone without her husband. Chanchal means not steady, not regular. She can give wealth and also take it away at that point. Thus, Lakshmi in the house of Ravana is chanchala or unsteady. Men of Ravana's class, not Lakshmi, without her husband, Narayana. Therefore, they become unsteady due to Lakshmi. Yeah, I've seen this a lot. The Hindus will worship Lakshmi without Narayana. And it's just like, and I've told the Hindus this, I said, well, how would you feel if someone comes and is looking at your wife all the time and ignores you? Would you like that? So that's what, that's exactly what's happening when people worship Lakshmi without Narayana next to it. Thus, Lakshmi in the house of Ravana is chanchala or unsteady. Men of Ravana's class want Lakshmi only without her husband Narayana. Therefore, they become unsteady due to Lakshmi. Materialistic persons find fault on the part of Lakshmi, but in Vaikuntha, Lakshmi is fixed in the service of the Lord. In spite of her being the goddess of fortune, she cannot be happy without the grace of the Lord. Even the goddess of fortune needs the Lord's grace in order to be happy. Yet in the material world, even Brahma, the highest created being, seeks the favor of Lakshmi for happiness. So that means they should not worship Lakshmi without Narayana. Therefore, we worship Lakshmi Narayana, or Radha and Krishna. We don't just worship Krishna, Radha and ignore Krishna. But there are people like that. Text 22. The goddesses of fortune worship the Lord in their own gardens by offering tulsi leaves on the coral paved banks of the transcendental reservoirs of water. While offering worship to the Lord, they can see on the water the reflection of their beautiful faces with raised noses. And it appears that they have become more beautiful because the Lord's kissing their faces. That's a very nice phrase. When you say raised noses, that means they don't have a nose that goes like this, down like that. Or it's somewhat like my nose also. They have raised nose, the nose goes up like this. It's considered more beautiful. While offering worship to the Lord, they can see on the water the reflection of their beautiful faces with raised noses. And it appears that they have become more beautiful because of the Lord kissing their faces. Generally, when a woman is kissed by her husband, her face becomes more beautiful. And Vaikuntha also, although the goddess of fortune is naturally as beautiful as can be imagined, she nevertheless awaits the kissing of the Lord to make her face more beautiful. The beautiful face of the goddess of fortune appears in ponds of transcendental crystal water when she worships the Lord with tulsi leaves in her garden. Okay, so let's put it like this. Everything in Vaikuntha is transcendental and wonderful. And most things in the material world is disgusting and horrible. Just put it like that, that's to understand this verse. Text 23. It is very much regrettable that unfortunate people do not discuss the description of the Vaikuntha planets. but engage in topics which are unworthy to hear and which bewilder one's intellect. Those who give up the topics of life content and take the talk of the material world are thrown into the darkest region of ignorance.
Time check.
Oh, it's time, okay, all right, well, we'll stop there on verse 23. Harivilas. All willing to see what will follow.
Don't know what to do.
Are there any questions?
Safe.
Any questions?
Back to meeting. Any questions on the online?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, I had a question on protecting our children. So you're talking about sex offenders and parents not paying attention to their children, but does that mean, I mean, Pavan's only 4 right now, so obviously one of us is always with him, watching him. But does that mean as they're getting older, even into adulthood, we should always be keeping an eye on them the same way we are right now?
Well, at least until they're past their puberty. Puberty starts when 12 years old and goes up to maybe 13, 14. So you should very, very carefully, protect your children until you're around at least 16. Once they become 16, they begin to really explore the world and the plus and minuses in the world. The pluses and the minuses. Minuses are demoniac activities and pluses are spiritual activities. So if you have trained your child properly to be Krishna conscious, by the time they get to be about 14, 15, 16, when they can say no to you, they won't, out of respect. And they will understand already the difference between good people and bad people. And associate the association of bad people, and associate only with genuine devotees. If they're not educated properly, or if they're educated only in schools, and most schools are demoniac and give demoniac education, then when the kid becomes at the puberty, when they become like 12, 13, 14, 15, they start to revolt against their parents' advice, because now they're under the influence of the demons in school and movies and books and things like that. So it's very important to always be vigilant about what your child is seeing. Just don't put your child in front of the television because you're busy doing some work and you don't want to sit next to your child and teach them to be Krishna conscious and learn to make money. And therefore the child is being educated by all the demons on the television or in movies or in games, computer games. So the more you spend time with your child, not only the wife, but the husband also, the more you spend time with your child, educating them and Krishna consciousness and proper things, helping them with their homework and making sure the curriculum that they're being exposed to is not full of nonsense. And the best thing is to educate your children at home. That way you have control on what they're learning. If you let them go to human schools today, you don't have control on what they're learning. And they're learning not only from the teacher, they're learning from the other kids who do not follow the regulations. You peer pressure. So best thing is educate your kids yourself. And that's you have to have an agreement with your husband that you'll spend the prime time with your kids educating. And maybe you can make a group of mothers who want to educate your kids without sending them to school. And that way your kid won't feel as if, oh, they're deprived, associating with other kids. But you don't want them to associate with nonsense kids, so you have to find other mothers like yourself who are really involved in the education of the kids and want their kids to have a spiritual education rather than demoniac education. Everything in the material world now is demoniac education. Grooming children to become sense gratifiers. And that, of course, is not the culture of Krishna consciousness. We are trying to teach kids to become servants of Krishna. There's a difference between being groomed to be a sense gratifier and being taught to be a devotee of Krishna. Hare Krishna. All the way to Prabhupada.
Ki Jai.
Any more questions online?
We're gonna end the call. See you in the evening.